Gabrielle Green. Gabrielle is a second year economics and international relations student at the University of St. Andrews and founder of the New Global Normal. She's passionate about all aspects of theatre. In fact, she's passionate about acting, of course, directing, and writing. She has acted in several productions at school, at university. Gabrielle is currently based in Scotland and Hong Kong. Gabrielle, welcome. How are you?
Hello, I'm good. Thank you so much for having me.
Pleasure. Thank you for joining us. I hope you don't mind the late hours, but we kind of
No, not
like the
at
late night show.
all.
Feels like a mini version of David Letterman sort of thing.
Definitely.
YouTubers, yay. Okay, so I'm going to ask you a few questions. So I'm going to start with asking you, can you tell us about yourself and your background?
Sure. So, I'm Australian. I was born in Australia, but I moved to Hong Kong when I was quite young.
Why did I
So I
detect
grew up with.
a Scottish accent when I first talked to you?
Oh, really?
A little
I do
bit.
not. I do not have an Australian accent at all. So.
No. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, that's new. Surprise.
Because I moved to Hong Kong when I was quite young, and then actually I did most of my schooling in a British school in South Korea, which is why I have my funny accent. Um, so I come from a large family. I have 4 siblings.
Wow.
I have 2 brothers and 2 sisters. Um, and I'm really enjoying that. But because of COVID, I'm studying online in Hong Kong.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So how's that working out for you? Like, do you miss being in Scotland? Like, is it good to be here? How do you feel about it?
It's definitely not ideal studying
Mm,
online.
mm,
It obviously doesn't have the same kind of benefits as studying in person, and obviously the university experience is so much more than just studying, right, which we're missing out on. But at the same time, I feel like I've made the best of the situation, and it's opened me up to opportunities that I otherwise wouldn't have.
yeah.
Kind of sort after like COVID and cigarettes. If I was in St Andrews, I never would have looked online for auditions happening in Hong Kong
Right.
because I had nothing to do.
Right. Right. Fair
So it's
enough.
definitely opened up. It's definitely opened up opportunities in that respect, and that because I have a bit more time on my hands because everything's been cancelled. I'm just kind of being more considerate and putting more thought into what I'm doing
Hmm.
every day and trying to make the best of the situation.
Yeah. Yeah. Sure. So, okay, let's talk about the play you were in, Home Three. Tell us about your
Yeah.
experience. How was it? Have you ever, and let me ask
Um,
you, have you ever done a performance, like virtual performance, like a pre-recorded one on Zoom?
no, never.
Okay.
I think it's a fuss for a lot of people right now.
Yes.
It was definitely interesting, the virtual aspect of it. Also, just on a practical level, like because our auditions happened quite late and my family was sleeping, so I had to make sure I had all my doors closed so no one could hear me and so the dog wouldn't bark. So that was one thing that I never thought I would have to think about before in terms of theatre. But it was also really fun. I found it more difficult to get in character and to get kind of pumped because you don't have, one of the really special things about being on stage is the shared energy between actors and the energy between actors and directors. And that's something that obviously you can't replicate when you're doing virtual theatre. But I really think we made the best of the situation, and I really love what we made. I think it's an amazing piece of theatre, and I think this entire kind of virtual theatre that's been birthed out of the COVID pandemic, I hope it's something that will stay and develop because it's a really fascinating way to do theatre and something that hasn't really been done before. So it was definitely interesting, and I'm really glad I'm glad I got to be a part of one of the first kind of virtual theatre showcases in the world. That's really cool.
Thank you. So basically, you worked with an American playwright. You worked with an American actress based in New York. That was Kim Barrios Lynn. play written by Glenn Alterman, who I believe is based in New York. Um, you were
Yeah.
directed by Joyce Lowe, who is based in Singapore, and you were in Hong Kong yourself, and you were also acting with Helen Norton, who is based in Hong Kong. How did that work
Yeah.
out? Yeah, how was it? Tell us.
Um, that was super interesting. A few things to note with that. First is it was kind of interesting to sort out the time difference. So it's always funny to be on a call where it's dark on my end and then it's the morning in for people in New York. So that was kind of interesting. In terms of just getting into the right mindset for acting. But the other thing that I really loved about it is how much more accessible we've all I was thinking because I'm really passionate personally just because of the way I've been brought up that I've moved around and I think a lot of expats in Hong Kong and in other countries in Asia feel this way is oh shoot, what was I going to say? Yeah, is that it's really highlighted what we can do together, and the international aspect of it is something that I'm super passionate about, and I'm so glad that I've had the opportunity without leaving my bedroom being able to work with people literally on the other side of the world. And I think that's so cool because that's not something that was conceivable this time last year, right? Us working, being able to do something of this scale just because you have to think about traveling and stuff. But as soon as this constraint was put on all of us, it's almost opened up a door in a sense, which is kind of a weird juxtaposition. But yeah, it was definitely super interesting. And because I'm so passionate about uh, internationalism and looking at each other not as confined by our nations, but as a community. I love how it emphasized that aspect of it. So yeah, if that makes sense.
Absolutely, yes, yes. I mean, like, that's one thing that we absolutely liked. It wasn't fun not to be able to go to the theatre and not be able to perform. Of course, this was excruciating. But if I think about the whole thing and if I look at the bigger picture, we actually get to work at a global, like at a global scale with artists and actors, directors, playwrights from all over the world. And I have been wanting to connect Hong Kong with New York so much. And there you go. We have it there. So it's quite something. And yeah, I agree with you because I kind of want to, you know, I want to go back, but I kind of want to keep the
Yeah,
medium
definitely.
because why not, right? I mean, like, can't we do both?
Mhm.
It's actually like um, I follow someone on Instagram, which is like a theatre company in the UK, and it's quite a big scale company for what I understand. And they were talking about this musical, which I really would love to watch, and they're able to put it on at the theatre for the time. They will be able to do so soon. And I'm like, well, this is great news, but can you guys film it so I can watch it? Now we're kind of used to it, don't you
Yeah.
think? Hmm. So, um, what did you think of your character? Let's talk about Home Three. What did you think about your character? What did you think of the story? And what were the challenges for you in this piece?
Sure. So I play Gail, for those who haven't watched it yet. So she's a university student who's stuck at home and not necessarily enjoying her mother's company. Um, and is on a she the play she's on a Zoom call with her botany professor. So I think uh the character, because she's quite similar in age and circumstance, in that regard, it was easy to get into and it was easy to empathize. I mean, being from a big family, I understand what it feels like to feel kind of closed in and claustrophobic when
Hmm.
you're surrounded by a family. Um, but the other thing is she has quite in the play we see that she has quite a tepid relationship with her mother, which is something that I kind of had to think more in depth about in terms of acting, I'm incredibly close with my family and we're more like friends. So that was something that was a bit of a challenge. And then acting in general is, especially characters who aren't introverted, like Gail wasn't, is quite difficult for me because I'm quite an introverted person, which is kind of bizarre for someone who likes acting. But so it was difficult in that regard, getting into character because she's quite childish. Um, but I think I love the play. I think it's interesting, and the thing that really struck me about Glenn Alterman's writing was how simple the dialogue was, but how in depth the characters were just with simple dialogue. For example, you could see with my character Gail, like her dialogue was really simple, and this. But if you watch it again and you go and you kind of read into the dialogue closely, you kind of you look at you notice this kind of internal dilemma that she's facing and why she feels the need to be childish, because the play is basically it's like a mini movie because there's so much going on in her life. Like she's gay and she hasn't told her mom and she doesn't think her mom's going to approve, and she
Mm.
has a relationship with her married professor which she also hasn't told her mom about, and she's also stuck at home and her father passed away because of COVID. So there's all these things going on, and it's really interesting to see these um really big issues being tackled within a 10-minute play. And I think uh Glenn Alterman's writing was quite incredible in the fact that he was able to take all these huge issues and condense them into something that's easy to watch, that's funny at times, and that isn't yeah that's easy to digest. So yeah, I don't know if that makes sense, but I really enjoyed acting Gail, especially because she's very different from me, which I enjoy acting.
Well, that's great. Like it's a good challenge, isn't it? When you get to play characters that they are very different from you, and you bring them alive. So
Yeah.
it's yeah, well, um, quite interesting. Okay, great. So let's talk about COVID-19, and let's talk about how it affected you personally, artistically, or otherwise. How were you affected by it?
Well, artistically, in the sense, just something that's quite concrete is I was assistant directing a production of Emma, which I
Oh,
was really excited about in St Andrews with my friend,
mm,
and that got cancelled because of COVID. So that's just something very concrete that affected me artistically. And I think a lot of people in the artistic community have dealt with that, is things being cancelled at short notice and yeah, suddenly not having anything to do. So that was one thing. The other thing in terms of COVID in general was just the fact that um, I was my second year at university, and I'm lucky to have had my brother. My brother also goes to St Andrews, but being stuck in St Andrews with the lockdown and not being able to go home to Hong Kong was quite tolling mentally. Just because seeing all my friends leave, and then the town, which is quite small. If you know St Andrews, it's a really small, isolated town, so it just became almost barren because all the students left. But my brother and I were stuck there because flights were difficult to get to Hong Kong, so that was quite difficult. Though, um, yeah, so that's kind of the two biggest ways it's affected
mm.
me. I'm lucky that none of my immediate friends or family have gotten COVID and everyone's fine. And I'm lucky to be in Hong Kong where it's comparatively okay compared to other places in the world. So I think I'm in a luckier position than other people, but it's definitely been challenging, especially mentally.
I'd say
Yeah.
yes, it really took a toll on people's mental health, lifestyle, and so forth. Like, even, we are aware, we're lucky to be in Hong Kong. We are aware that there are worse places, like places that are doing much worse than us. But on the other hand, no matter how worse it is in other places, you can still be affected by it. So
Definitely.
yeah, and I'm sure it affected your life academically, I'd say.
Oh yeah, definitely. It's been the switch to online learning has been really difficult, just from the thing I mentioned before, that the university experience is completely gone. Like that the part of university that everyone looks forward to isn't there.
Yeah.
And also it's difficult to engage yourself as much with online content than when you're in a university environment and you're in an environment with other people learning and with professors and feeling the passion and the environment of the university. It's so difficult to engage yourself on that level when you're not in that environment. But then again, it's not a fast world problem because COVID is so difficult. But I'm really grateful for the position I'm in. So I don't want to discount the fact that I'm in a way. I know some people are affected in that they don't have stable Wi-Fi, so they can't even access their lectures.
Mm.
They can't afford online textbooks or online materials. So I'm really lucky in that regard to have access to everything and to be able to do my education, if not in person, online.
Sure. Yeah. Um, what is it that you are planning when COVID is over? What will you do when everything is over, or at least we can say everything calms down?
The first thing is I'm really excited to return to St. Andrews and see all my friends, and planning to travel more. My friends and I were planning to travel across Europe.
Mm.
Since I haven't really been around Europe so much, so that's something I'm really excited to start traveling again. Especially, you'll understand as someone who lives, as an expat, that traveling's such a core part, right, of our lives, and to have that taken away, it's crazy to be in the same place for so long. So,
I'm kind of glad in a way that I've done a lot of traveling last year. And this year I was planning to relax anyway, not quite in this way, but I was planning to travel a bit less. So I mean, it's been a year that I've been stuck in Hong Kong, but I kind of look forward to travel when I can, even though my question is, will it be safe? Will it be safe? Yeah.
yeah, definitely. Well, we'll see with the vaccines. I know when I traveled to Hong Kong, it was kind of in the middle, just at the height when the pandemic in its first wave in the UK was reaching its worst. It was in like early May. That was such a bizarre experience. Just with airplanes were 30% full and you can move around. And I stopped over in Amsterdam for 7 hours and it was just completely, that's Amsterdam airport is so busy usually, and it was completely deserted. So it was a very bizarre and stressful trip, like having to sterilize everything and worrying about how far away you are from everyone and using tissues although I'm incredibly paranoid, so maybe that's just the way I traveled. But it's gonna be nice, hopefully, fingers crossed for the vaccine, being able to return to some sense of normalcy and being able to travel without this extreme anxiety.
Yeah, I mean, like, would you take the vaccine when it's ready? Would you be confident in taking it?
Yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm. Let's
Yeah,
hope
I'll
for,
definitely. Yeah.
mhm. Let's hope for one soon, an effective one as well. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, now let's talk about how you view arts and plays and things like that. Um, what is your favorite play? Do you have a favorite play
Yeah, my
or
favorite
plays,
play
or more
is
than one?
Angels in America by Tony Kushner. Do you know that play? I
I
love that play so much.
I
It is
interviewed,
like it's
yes, I interviewed James McLinden last week from
Mhm.
playwright from Choices, and he said exactly the same thing. What is your favorite play? Angels and You in America. Sorry.
It is so good, and especially I don't know if you've seen it, but the National Theatre live version that was streamed quite a few years ago now, and it has Nathan Lane, Andrew Garfield.
Mhm,
It's so good. I love that play so much because every time you read it, because it's so dense, and
mhm.
each piece of dialogue you can just take apart and analyze, which is what I love doing with plays. So that's my favorite play in the world.
Okay, interesting. Do you have a favorite playwright?
Not particularly. Um, no, not really. I need to be. No, because I never really read when I read plays, and I don't really read by author. So no, not particularly. I've playwrights that I like the playwright for Angels in America, um, and I like Brecht a lot as well. Uh, but no, not necessarily. I don't have a favorite playwright.
Mhm. What do you think of, well, since you are in Hong Kong, I can ask you, what do you think about the theatre scene in Hong Kong, and how is that different from the theatre scene in the UK? Well, or Scotland, where you are at?
Sure. To be honest, I'm quite new to the theatre scene in Hong Kong since I moved here when I was young, and then when I just went into secondary school, I went to South Korea, and then I only came back last year. So this is kind of my first exposure to the Hong Kong theatre scene. So I can't say so much about it, though. I can talk a little bit about the at least the student theatre scene in Edinburgh and St Andrews. So obviously Edinburgh is a hub for theatre, right? And so that feeds into St Andrews, and St Andrews has an amazing student theatre community. It's called Mermaids, and they do a lot of plays, and I think they've been doing a lot of things around the pandemic as well. They've been doing uh, like radio plays and socially distant plays and outdoor plays and things like that. So St Andrews has a very bustling and welcoming community there in terms of the performing arts, even though I don't think it's a degree option, which is really great for people like me who love, love, absolutely love performing arts and theatre and everything about it, but don't necessarily want to pursue it academically. So that's something I'm really grateful for, is I get the opportunity to be a part of these plays and be a part of uh, a performing arts scene without having to pursue it academically. So yeah, so it's really I'm not too sure for Hong Kong. I need to. That's one of my missions, is to become more exposed to the scene here in Hong Kong.
Okay. Um, what is the piece where you work on, whether you acted or directed or co-directed, that you are the most proud of?
Um, Actually, it's a piece I did in high school. With my, I kind of helped. I acted in it. I wrote it. I wrote parts of it. I did the props for quite a bit of it. So it's this piece that was completely student written, which I helped my drama teacher with, called A Tale to Tell. And what's amazing about it, so it was all these different, because our school was so international in Korea, it was all these different uh, fairy tales, but from different cultures and in different languages, and we strung them all together. So it was like we did two Korean fairy tales, and we did a French one, maybe a Russian one, and we strung them all together in an hour-long play, and it was just such a magical experience to be a part of, and to also be able to kind of see all aspects of theater, because I helped out in that one, directing and doing props for the Chinese fairy tale. And I also ended up writing the the part that stringed all the fairy tales together, and I acted in it as well. So that was something that yeah, that's the piece that I'm most proud to have been a part of. It definitely worked the most on, because it was so amazing.
Great. Can you tell us more about your upcoming or future artistic projects, whenever and whatever they may be, especially whenever?
Um, so I don't have anything necessarily. This is all kind of I'm only so when I get back to St Andrews, I'm going to involve myself again in the student theater there. So audition for whatever plays are there. Maybe hopefully I'm really passionate about directing.
Mhm.
Um, in terms of Hong Kong, I definitely want to be more involved in the theater scene here. So I've got nothing necessarily upcoming. Um, it's all just stuff that I'm doing on the side, but I hope it evolves into something. Like, I really love writing, so I'm writing some plays just in my own time. But it's all uh, just stuff I'm doing on the side, and hopefully it grows into something, because I'm so passionate about it.
Mhm. Do you have a figure or a role model who inspires you?
Like, oh geez. Definitely this is a generic answer, but my mom and dad, just because they work so hard to be where they are, and their attitude towards life is something that I'm really inspired by, about working every day to be your best self and always putting yourself out there, which is really applicable for theater, right? And performing arts, always putting yourself out there and putting who you are and not being afraid of who you are is a big part of who my mom and dad are. So definitely my mom and dad. Another person that I've been inspired by recently is Bill Gates, especially with what he's doing with the humanitarian efforts he's leading with the COVID-19 pandemic. I'm really inspired by people who use wealth that they've accumulated to do good in the world, and that's something I hope to do one day, is to to use my privilege to help people who are less privileged. So that's something I'm really inspired by, is Bill Gates and Melinda Gates' resolve. So they're both generic answers, but
If you go to Seattle, you'll see the foundation, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and it's quite remarkable.
mm,
It's they've been doing like some very interesting work, um, thanks to their privileged life. Like they're using it for a good cause. So
yeah.
it's definitely remarkable. Do you have a favorite book or author or story?
Geez, this is interesting because I read a lot, but I don't necessarily have a favorite book just because there's too many. I'm trying to think of what I've read recently. I've been reading a lot of graphic novels recently. So the first thing that comes to mind is a graphic novel called Day Tripper. Have you heard of it?
No.
Oh, it's really good. It's by the people who wrote, oh shoot, The Umbrella Academy, which I think is a show on Netflix. It's not a
Yes.
superhero. It's like
Okay.
an existential, like a man, like an. It's a really cool kind of existential crisis esque graphic novel. But that's just something that I've read recently. What else did I? Oh, another book that I love, which kind of shows my naughty side, is The Big Short. You know the movie The Big Short with Steve Carell and Ryan Gosling? Yeah,
Yes.
so I read the book over the summer because I'm really passionate about the financial crisis and the subprime mortgage market in the US and kind of the events leading up to the financial crisis. And that book was really amazing in that how they turned this real life event into how the author turned this real life event into something that read like a novel. And I had to keep on reminding myself that it was real, that this actually happened.
Okay. Well, if you are passionate about the financial crisis, and especially in the US, I highly recommend, unless you have watched it already, um, the Lehman trilogy.
Oh, I've heard about it, but I haven't had the chance to watch it. Is it good?
Spectacular.
Oh shoot, I need to watch
That's
it.
and that doesn't even describe it. And I take a lot of I take a lot of pride in saying that it's amazing because it's written by an Italian author.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yes.
I
Uh,
definitely need to watch it.
yes. So it's basically about the Lehman family,
Mhm.
who basically went to America in the 1800s and built their fortune there. And it's not so much like I was expecting more about this is the family that allegedly um, kind of created the financial crisis in 2008. But it's not just about that. It's about this family, how it goes to America with absolutely nothing. Harry Lehman was the first one to go, and then his brothers followed.
Mhm.
And it's absolutely mind blowing and so inspiring because, yes, you think like, these were different times. These were times where people arrived with a suitcase and like maybe a paper with their names in it, a name that would get changed because no one could pronounce a Russian or a German or whatever name. So names would be changed. and they basically arrived with nothing, and they formed an empire. It's so inspiring. Like anyone who is interested in business, crisis and whatnot, that would be the jam, you know. And it's three actors who do
Mhm.
everything, all the characters, all the accents, everything. And it's
Wow.
and it's almost 4 hours long.
Wow. I
Tr-
definitely need to watch it.
Trust me, you will not get bored. I was like devouring the screen. It was the National Live Theatre that was showing it when we could still go to the theatre back in the days. And amazing. They had like three intervals, I remember. Um, and of course, like you needed to stand up after a while to stretch your legs. But apart from that, didn't bother me at all. It was amazing. Yes, yes.
Oh, okay. That's
So
definitely
highly recommended.
okay.
Last question. What are you watching on Netflix?
Right now, I took a break from watching stuff on Netflix. What's the last thing I watched? It's embarrassing, but I've been rewatching Community.
Okay.
Um, if you know what that is.
I haven't watched it. No.
I started watching it because it is Chevy Chase, and I love
Okay.
Chevy Chase movies, and it has John Oliver, and I love John Oliver. But it's quite funny. It's also feel good, which I think is important right now. So that's the last thing I watched on Netflix.
Okay. All righty. Great to have you, Gabby. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so
And
much.
stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned for more interviews. We have Sean Phillips from Tobacco Gold, COVID and Cigarettes, and we have David Deblinger, Happy for You, on Thursday and Friday. So stay tuned for more interviews. If you haven't caught it live, don't worry, you'll have plenty of opportunities to catch it. So saying goodbye now. Thank you.
Thank you.